failure and fix it. And I think now is scratch as opposed to sometime later.
Arnie, I think you make such a good point. In this country, and I've said this on many occasions and maybe even to you, we're only limited in many respects to two things. It's either crisis or it's leadership that brings about major change in this country. Oftentimes it's been both. I unfortunately still don't believe the vast majority of the American people feel the crisis as others do in our country with regard to health care. So we're going to require strong, competitive, incredibly visionary leadership for this to happen. I want to go as far as we can go with this, but it's going to take a good leader, and it's going to take more people being willing to engage themselves in this debate than we've seen so far.
Ken Pittman from Massachusetts.
Senator Daschle, how is it that the Democratic presidential candidates to this point have not laid out what would be appealing to conservatives like me, that the overall effort to reform health care essentially saves billions of dollars if we can get people from preventing themselves from getting into further stages of medical conditions, and if they're detected earlier, I mean, literally billions of dollars can be saved. Why is that not being articulated on the campaign trail, which I've been watching very closely?
Ken, that's such a good point, because I have said now for some time it isn't really access or quality that will drive this debate, it's cost. It's why businesses are stepping up to the plate for the first time and saying we can't tolerate the system any longer. It's why many who say we can't afford change have to answer the question, can we afford the status quo? We spend $7,500 per capita, 40% more than any other country today. In 10 years, it's going to be $15,000 per capita. This country can't sustain that dramatic growth in the increase in cost. So we've got to put the focus where it needs to go for both the politics as well as the substance of this debate.
Brian Kepler, Kepper, right?
Senator, how can we affect national healthcare reform realistically when the healthcare industry, which is 1/7 of all the economy, it's 1/11 of all the jobs, is the largest and the richest of all economic sectors and is the biggest contributor to lobbying? The device and drug sectors alone contribute about 8% of all lobbying dollars. As long as we perpetuate that system, how can we fix healthcare if we don't fix America and its governance first?
Well, I think it's very, very hard, and we would have done it by now if it were easy. But you ask such a good question. I think that it's important for us to realize, number one, we won't do it without leadership. Number two, we won't do it without coalition building. And number three, I think we won't do it unless we put defenders of the status quo on the defensive. We've got to do that for the first time. We haven't done a very good job of that in the past. That's got to change. If we don't do those three things, we don't get health care reform.
Guy James, The Guy James Show.
Senator, I have an issue with implementation of this, and realistically, the public hears politicians talk, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Realistically, what kind of a time frame are we looking at down the road? I've had so many people ask, yes, they talk about it, but will I see it in my lifetime? Realistically, how long do you think it'll take to form a coalition with the type of Congress we have right now, which doesn't seem to want to form any coalitions whatsoever?
Well, the problem we have is that I think we have a very, very short time frame. I would say we don't have any more than about 24 months to get this passed. And the only way it's going to pass is if the next President of the United States, the 44th President, steps up to the plate virtually the day after he or she is inaugurated and says, I'm going to make health care my number one or my number two priority in the first term of my administration, and we're going to do everything we can. We're going to keep the Congress here. We're going to work night and day to get this done. It takes that kind of a passion, that kind of a focus, that kind of a commitment in order for us to deal with the time frame you're talking about. Implementation could take longer, but passage, I think, only gives us about 24 months.
Howard Monroe, Ohio, and West Virginia.
Senator, I heard you say earlier that we need to disabuse ourselves of some myths about health care, including, if I understood you correctly, that we have the best health care system in the world. If we don't, who does?
Well, if you look at the national statistics, the Scandinavian countries always come out on top in terms of value and overall cost containment. We ranked 35th in outcomes last year, 31st in life expectancy, 29th in infant mortality, and yet we spend 40% more than the second most expensive country, Switzerland. 40% more at $7,500. So we're not getting the value, we're not getting the access, we're certainly not getting the quality. And I believe until we address that problem, we're going to defer to others, and we shouldn't accept that position in the world today.
You don't have time for another round, or you do? I don't know what you're...
You've got WJ.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Senator Daschle, and thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.